That will have to do, I thought. Somehow I'd leapt to my feet, and I found myself forced to run again. More flaming barriers were bursting up all over the cemetery, and the undead masses were soon high-speed shuffling away from them and towards the graveyard entrance, where a crowd was frantically shoving against a pair of massive iron gates. A few attempted to scatter in different directions and were turned away by pointed bursts of flame. The word shepherding came to mind. "What's going on?" I said, repeating myself somewhat. "It's a sign of the righteous," said someone next to me, who was gazing at a point above and to the left of him. "We have been resurrected for a day of judgment." Too late I noticed his suspiciously cassock-like robe and collar. Mages, even student ones, don't get along with priests. Priests are all about using magic to heal wounds, and mages are all about using magic to create the wounds in the first place. Still, religion was probably the best place to start looking for an explanation, since there was a definite apocalyptic taste to the current events. Day of Judgment? He looked down at me in that way priests do, with what remained of his lips smashed tightly together and his eyes staring like I'd just whittled on his daughter. "The Lord has returned the righteous to life in a time for the rapture." I looked around for my cripmates, but they had been absorbed by the crowd, and once they had reached a certain stage of decomposition, all corpses start to look alike. I said, glancing towards the spooky and unhelpful forest. "Does Almighty God say anything about the itinerary for Judgment Day? I mean, are we supposed to meet him somewhere?" Almost all the resurrected were now gathered around the entrance gates. A couple of forward-thinking undead were rattling the padlock with numb fingers, but they jumped back in terror when a colossal explosion rang out. As one, the crystals disintegrated, filling the air with tiny shards of twinkling green glass. A fork of lightning split the night sky, a boom like a crashing of worlds. The wind picked up, fluttering our rotting rags insanely against about our bodies. Something was obviously trying to get our attention. "This is it," said the priest. "I am returning to my father." He kicked me in the leg. "Do not stand so close to me, demon, and stain not my soul." "Ow!" A laugh screamed out over the graveyard, a hearty and insane laugh, about as far removed from polite as dinner laughter as you can get. This was the kind of insane laughter that even the truly insane have to practice for years to get right. There, standing on top of a gate with legs wide, one fist pointed skyward and one clinging to a nearby pillar for stability, was a crackling silhouette. A bolt of lightning set alight a circle of fuel, obviously prepared beforehand, and fire quickly rose around his perch. "Rise, my hordes of darkness!" he shrieked, and then he did that laughing again. With the firelight, I could now make out his features. He was very tall and very thin, with a body and skin tone of one who has placed far too many pieces of his soul in far too many evil magic artifacts. He had tried to disguise his skinny build with a thickly padded black cloak and pair of spiked shoulder pads the size of watermelons. Framing his sunken face was an ornate obsidian helmet carved somewhat predictably into the shape of an angry fanged skull. In addition to all of that, he had dressed a bunch of dread guys, so he may as well have been wearing a sash with necromancer writ big. "Rise," he repeated, throwing up his arms. "Rise and join the ranks of my unholy horde." He seemed to notice for the first time that we weren't exactly rushing to his side, but were mainly watching him as a zoo patron would watch a crazy monkey, curious but ready to move at the first sign of poo flinging. There was a minute of silence, awkward silence, before someone near the back with their head held under their arm said, "Who's this twat?" "Are you God?" asked someone else. The necromancer clearly wasn't prepared for either of those questions, but to his credit he recovered quite quickly. Perhaps I am," he said, flashing a winning smile. "Your ruler, certainly, and soon the ruler of the world." He stretched out the word world until a roll of thunder served up the exclamation mark. "March, my undead minions! We ride for my fortress of darkness!" Glances were exchanged between the undead minions in question, most of them directed towards the agnostic speaker of a previous question, who was apparently being groomed as company spokesman. He was a turquoise fellow with missing ears and piles of grave dirt on his shoulders. "Do we have to?" This time, the necromancer's improvisational skills abandoned him. His arms dropped to his sides, and when he replied, the booming, insane qualities were missing from his voice. Well, yes, I mean, you're my undead minions. I raised you from the grave. You have to do everything I say. Doubt was clearly nagging at him. He extended his hands again, holding his gnarled ebony staff horizontally. I command thee to march! The commands are the futile bleating of a damned bedfellow of a serpent, growled the priest. March! A spark of panic materialized in the necromancer's eyes, as if it had finally dawned on him that he had just placed himself right in the middle of a cranky, unstoppable army of unwilling zombies, and identified himself as the source of their misfortune. March! Walk! Jump up and down! Do a little dance! The staff wobbled nervously in his grip. You've got free will, haven't you? You've got free will, haven't you? Sort of, said the spokesman. They've got free will, cried the necromancer to a trio of men in full suits of spiky black armor who had been tending to a quartet of horses some distance away. How the hell have they got free will? I don't know what to tell you, Lord Deadgrave, said one of the soldiers, his voice echoing nicely in his senselessly huge helmet. It's your ritual. Deadgrave smacked himself in the face with a full open palm. It's my ritual. It's my ritual. But I came here for the horde. What the hell am I supposed to do with a bunch of smelly independents? Why don't you just ask them us to join your horde, said the haughty. Why don't you just ask us to join your horde, said the haughty lady of no arms, like polite, decent people do. Would you really? If I asked? Garthurus, would you put this fire out, please? I think it's coming straight from my shoes. Maybe, said our spokesman, as the armored man began stamping on a dwindling ring of flame. I mean, we've never really been in any undead hordes before, so we might be interested in an opportunity to try new things. And it's not like we have much else to do with our time now that we're piles of rotting meat and bones of no one besides utterly depraved would ever want to sleep with, said the decrepit old corpse, who I still felt had issues. Deadgrave tapped his staff against his palm pensively. Do you want to join my horde? The undead closest to the spokesman, the one who had anointed themselves senior members of the undead community, went into huddled conference. For a few minutes, all eyes were on the muttering scum down of assorted abominations. Someone put forward a motion, someone else seconded it, and the meeting was adjourned. What does it pay? Said the spokesman, after a cough. Pay? Said Deadgrave distastefully. Why should it pay anything? A collective moan descended on the crowd, and some of them started drifting away, losing interest in the whole stupid affair. But wait, don't go, said the necromancer, flapping his arms to avoid losing his audience. What I meant was, well, what do you want to get paid? What could you possibly want the money for? What could you possibly want the money for? No arms opened their mouth to reply, but no answer was forthcoming. Deadgrave continued. You don't need food. You don't need water. You don't need to sleep. So you don't need shelter. So you don't need rent money. You can't get tired, so you don't need to pay for carriages and things. What else is there? Prostitutes? Tried Garthurus, leaning amicably on a tombstone. Well, like he said, they need to be blind or open-minded to a completely shameful degree. I just don't think any of you could have possible need for a regular wage. Just because we don't need it doesn't mean we couldn't find a use for it, said our spokesman. We could donate it to charity, arrange trust funds for our surviving loved ones, take up antique collecting, go to the opera. They wouldn't let you get you in at the opera. Well, that was just an example, wasn't it? We could go to a pantomime or some low-budget musical production or something. The point is, you can't expect to hire an army without incentive. If everyone could do it, then the whole economy would collapse. People were starting to drift off again, so when the words like economy entered the conversation, as they do when words like economy enter the conversation, so Deadgrave was spurred to interrupt. Okay, listen. What would you say to a profit-sharing scheme? The drifting stopped. The crowd cocked a collective ear. Join my horde, and every time we fall upon a town or village, you get to keep everything you loot, minus a small percentage. No, wait, come back. No deductions. Maybe a small. Okay, none of all. All of you, all yours, and a free room and board at my doom fortress. There was a lot of conferring going on among the shambling dead. I waited to see their decision. I'd been in enough angry mobs in my time to know that the smart money was always with the majority. And every month I'll take you all to see a low-budget musical production. A lot of heads were nodding approvingly now. The spokesman counted a show of hands, then relayed the result. Done. Then march, my undead horde! Screamed Dreadgrave, holding his arms aloft and getting back into the swing of things. We ride to my fortress of darkness!